Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and I'm going to be making a pretty off-the-cuff video, ladies and gentlemen. And the title is not wrong. I'm not like sitting here in clickbait. I might actually just leave Canada. I might actually be forced to move to another part of the world that I don't necessarily care about. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that really makes me mad, makes my blood boil, is politics, alright? Like, I don't like talking about politics, okay? I hate the idea of it. And generally, I understand, yes, politics is a very important thing, very necessary thing, but A, I'm not smart enough to discuss it, and B, it just feels like in the last few years, it's caused so much of a division that people are more interested in the idea of team sports than critically thinking, okay? But why are we mentioning politics? Now, in the last few months, you've probably seen me upload videos about a bill known as Bill C-11. And this is something that not only I've wanted to make videos about, but YouTube as a company has pestered its Canadian content creators to get videos about this out, to educate the public, and also, in a way, pester us to politically be involved with the actual government. Now, when it comes to the government of Canada, they don't care about anybody, okay? You could vote for the Liberals or Justin Trudeau. The guy gives no shits about you. It's some rich kid who's a plain prime minister, so to speak. You've got the Conservatives with, I think it's like Pierre Poilievre or whatever the hell the name is this time. That guy doesn't care about you. Honestly, no politician cares about you, no matter where you live. I don't know why this is a shocking concept to many people, but yes, politicians are just people pretending to care for you. Literally, just witness it for yourself. If you're ever in election season, the only time you'll ever see your MP, senator, whatever, is when they need votes. Okay, after that, motherfucker is a ghost. It's easier to catch Bigfoot than it is your actual political candidate, okay? So Bill C-11 is there, known as the Online Streaming Act, the Broadcasting Act. There's a portion of this act that has to do with the internet and broadcasting in general. Now, the way that broadcasting in Canada works is there is a basic concept known as CanCon, which is Canadian content, okay? Are you Canadian enough for the content that you produce and the country? Now, generally, this law or this act or this regulation has never really applied to the internet simply because when they made these laws, they made them back in the year like 1991, early 90s. So this is when like the internet wasn't even around, or when it was like basically in its infancy. So we're talking the ARPANET era, okay? But nowadays, there's a lot of people who broadcast stuff on the internet. It's not just us. We're not just content creators. We're more specifically talking about companies like Amazon with Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, obviously. You've got Google with their own like video, and I believe YouTube TV as well, which is like a live television component. And you get it. Nowadays, the broadcasters have shifted to the internet. And a lot of the old school companies, the TV cable companies, are losing millions of dollars a year and subscribers for people who are buying cheaper internet-based services. It's a lot cheaper for somebody to have a Netflix subscription than a cable TV subscription, because for cable TV, if they're watching it for the news, the weather, a lot of that is given to them via their cell phone anyways. A lot of people get their news these days from TikTok, Twitter, you name it. And when it comes to movies and entertainment, a lot of people just buy the entertainment service they care about. So for some people, they'll buy Disney Plus, they'll buy Netflix, Amazon, whatever. Nowadays, the act wants to basically treat these companies in the same way that companies domestically in Canada are treated. So that basically means that they need to have a certain requirement of Canadian content. Now, all in all, it sounds good. And the government has made it sound like, hey, a lot of those marginalized voices, so I guess minorities, people like me who have trouble at the airport, so to speak, get a bigger say in the world of media. Now, it all sounds really nice, okay? The government and all of its agents do a really good job on the fucking wording for these things, okay? Obviously, when you word it like that, you might think, damn, this is a pretty decent idea. Now, when it comes to the idea of this bill, it's to allow Canadian companies to have more equal footing in the entire grand majority of the world. Now, normally, where does YouTube and the YouTubers get involved? Why has YouTube been pestering us necessarily about this? Well, a lot of it is due to a vague law or vague definitions thereof. So far, with this law, there's been some waffling around when it comes to our content creators like me, Linus Tech Tips, various other Canadian YouTubers, technically considered broadcasters. And it's not just us. It could be people like XQC if he was streaming from Canada, or so on and so forth. People like Trainwrecks, who I believe streams from Vancouver. Now, of course, when it comes to this notion, it's a bit hairy, okay? But to understand where the real fear of God comes in this situation is that concept of Canadian content. Now, I personally have seen this as mostly a money-related move and a way to keep these legacy companies alive that are able to lobby the government. Companies like Rogers, Bell, Canadian broadcasters. Now, on the internet, there's been a lot of talk about misinformation, and there's been a lot of talk about censorship, if so to say. And I want to say this is partially true and partially not. Rather, this is not the focus, in my opinion, but this is unfortunately a byproduct of the vague laws we mentioned earlier regarding content creators being not clearly defined under this act. Now, one of the things that I saw on the internet that really set me off was this, okay? Now, this is a statement, I don't know whether this is a troll, but this is, the fact conservatives are vehemently against Bill C-11 is all the proof I need to support it. Again, it's like I said earlier when it comes to politics. I don't consider myself a conservative, but I'm one of those people where, like, listen, okay, when it comes to a political side, you might, if you're aligned, like, for instance, if I'm aligned left, all right, there's going to be 100 topics, okay? There's going to be 100 topics regarding finances, regarding broadcasting, so to speak, in this case, and then you get to serious stuff like gun control, abortion, you name it. You're probably not going to 100% agree with one side. You might align heavily towards one side, but this kind of a statement just sends me off to the point where it just shows me, it literally reads to me like I don't want to critically think. As long as this side that I've known to be a bad side, I'm just not going to agree with anything they say. Okay, simple as that. Listen, I don't believe 100% of what a conservative side would say, but in this case, all right, there's some things where I can kind of go, yeah, all right, this is where you can absolutely meet in the goddamn middle, especially when it comes to improper definitions of the law. Now, is this act necessarily toward censorship? I'm going to say it is not, simply due to the fact that when we talk about things like censorship, censorship is like, obviously, hey, we want to get involved. We want to stop this person from stating something, you know, we want to basically cut this person's speech, okay? In this case, it's more about maintaining control for a lot of the companies involved. Now, obviously, when it comes to Canadian content, who properly defines that, right? Like, is there laws around it? There's plenty of laws and regulations. The problem is for the average YouTuber, these are not laws and regulations that they can feasibly handle as they're producing content. For a lot of people making YouTube videos, it's a one-person show. Sometimes you'll have an editor, sometimes you'll have producers. Depending on the size and scale of your production, you might have more than one or two people. I, for instance, contract out to editors if I need to, all right? Simple as that. The only thing on my channel that's done by other people is things like sponsorships or all the boring back-end stuff. I literally do all the sourcing of content. I literally decide what I want to upload, I produce it, edit it, and upload it, and that's pretty much how things go. So under these laws, under CanCon laws, if you ever worked in film and television, you have to understand that there are legal teams literally involved to help you decide if your content that you create is eligible for Canadian tax credits or the Canadian content exemptions. That means who you hire, who's on your team, what kind of content you're producing, you name it. Now, for a lot of these old school companies like Rogers, Bell, or really the Canadian broadcasters, they've had these situations in place for over decades, okay? So for them, when this law or these bills or these regulations pass, they'll easily be the ones on YouTube that are given priority. And why do I say given priority? Well, because this law wants to specifically delve into the actual algorithms for YouTube Canada. So a lot of the Canadian YouTubers right now, most YouTubers, all YouTubers on the platform are all part of the algorithm. So in the algorithm for YouTube specifically picks who you would watch, who you are most likely to watch. So for instance, if I show up in your recommendations, it's probably because you've been watching my content or you've been watching content very similar to mine from other channels. YouTube's whole goal is to find the content exactly for the user out there. What this law hopes to do is push up Canadian content for the Canadian viewers. So specifically, if you're in Canada watching content, I won't show up in the recommendations, but a larger Canadian broadcaster, okay, their channels might show up because as far as the YouTube Canada algorithm goes, they're true Canadian content. I don't know if I have to tattoo the fucking Canadian flag onto my face or just have logos everywhere. I don't know. But the point is, all the Canadian content creators are going to be on completely unequal footing. The only channel that may possibly stand it would be Linus, simply because that organization is large enough. But I think even they would have issues. The thing about C-11, the thing about this bill, is it's literally designed to help protect a dying media dying legacy media, okay? Television companies have been fucking circling the drain for the last several years. And this is like a last-ditch effort to have some relevancy for them in a emerging online marketplace. Now, where the censorship comes into, and this is a real important point, this is why I kind of said it was half true, is because of these vague laws and the byproducts of, let's say that somebody in Canada wants to cover a political event, so to speak, right? Now, obviously, this is something that kind of already happens on YouTube to begin with. If you look up anything that's like, anything that's controversial, so to speak, it'll always be like news organizations being number one. But specifically for a Canadian creator, they may get suppressed in the algorithm, all right, if they're not Canadian enough. Let's say a Canadian top broadcaster makes a video on a controversial subject or a news topic, and then you've got a YouTuber who uploads their topic. Regardless of what that YouTuber is, if their content isn't CanCon enough, Canadian content enough, then they may be suppressed in the algorithm. It's something that YouTube has told us about if they have to algorithmically make these changes to comply with the law. Now, at the end of the day, all right, I think we've covered a lot of tangents. I think we've covered everything we really need to. There's a couple solutions to this. Obviously, I've gotten involved with the politics. I've tried doing what I can. I've written serious letters to whoever I could, whether they have been read, whether they have been addressed, whether anybody will take any of my fucking words into account over the big giant companies out there, that remains to be seen. But as far as I'm considering it, Canada might not be my home for too long. All right, simply due to the fact that if laws like this pass, YouTube is an important thing for me. I do want my content to reach the average amount of people. And if that means me moving down to Texas, Nevada, or California, for instance, a US area where these laws aren't a norm, then that would be great. That would be something I may have to end up looking into. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to move down to Texas, California, or Nevada, or the states in general. I very much love my country, Canada. Unfortunately, the political atmosphere of Canada does not reflect me or millions of its creators at all. Now, if you agree with this law, you probably have some very, very deep-rooted reason for it, but generally everyone that I've spoken to in the Canadian side of the of content creation, regardless of political spectrum, has all but unanimously said this is wrong, this is bad, this is just outright outlandish. Look, at the end of the day, we're part of a global village, okay? Canada is part of the rest of the 100+ countries in the world. We are all competing on the same level as everyone else. We don't need laws and regulations to protect Canadians, okay, or Canadian content, or the marginalized voices. The marginalized have never had a bigger voice, thanks to social media, than currently the times that we are living in. They don't need to be on big, massive television stations. They don't need to be part of big, massive news organizations. Now that anybody can pick up a smartphone and express their voices and concerns and be algorithmically delivered to everyone as they possibly can. This law and the vagueness of it only hurts the creators, and it hurts people in the online spectrum, and it serves only to protect the few companies that are part of dying broadcasting and dying media brands. But you know what? Politics is one of those things that I honestly can never change. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to relax. Hopefully this bill gets shut down at some point, but if it doesn't, well, Texas, here I come, I guess. But you know what? I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna record some Resident Evil Village DLC, and I'll probably have that uploaded as like a 3-hour block. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and I'm out.